The stream is live.
Is it saying it's live?
Yeah, that's what it just said.
Okay, good. All right. Um, wonderful. So we're going to talk about retirement today.
Yeah, I've done that a few times.
I know it. You just wrote about it too. So hold on a second because we're having trouble with one of them.
Yeah, the article I sent you about how jazz helps with retirement.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
a couple of years ago.
Okay, just a second. All right, one of the sites isn't going live, but that's okay. So, um, yeah, I know that you've written about that before. I have too. I just wrote in Substack about retirement and how our identity changes and how important it is for us to think of ourselves as not just our job title when we retire. That's helpful for us. But you also wrote about all the different things that you can do to make yourself um, fulfilled in retirement. One of the things you do is jazz.
Yes, yes. There's lots that can be done in retirement. You know, I thought it might be useful to begin by asking what retirement is. Um, because one meaning of retirement is that you stop working for pay, but continue to do the same sorts of things that you were doing when you were working for pay. So, for example, I've been doing mental health advocacy for a very long time, and technically, I retired in 2010 when I stopped getting paid for doing it, but I continued doing it. I continued advocating, I continued teaching, I continued writing until about a year ago. So, was I retired when I was doing all those things, or was I just not working for pay anymore?
I would say you were retired.
You would say that.
I would. And the reason is because there's a different motivation for what you were doing. You had a real intrinsic motivation to do what you were doing, as opposed to the extrinsic motivator that often comes with work.
Well, and many people have to work for money. I think one of the other things that is important to talk about a little bit is there's a difference between the kind of work that you and I have done, where we have careers that we've built over years of working at it.
Yeah,
There are lots of people who don't have careers, they have jobs.
right.
And of the people who have jobs, there are some of them who think that what they're doing is meaningful and they're proud of what they do, proud to be part of. I don't know. I was in a doctor's office yesterday, and there were all these receptionists who were there. And my guess is that they feel good about working in a doctor's office, although they probably wouldn't say, well, I have a career as a receptionist in a doctor's office. And then, of course, there are people who work just because they have to work to make a living. And they don't care at all about their work. They just do it because, again, they have to make a living. I think sometimes people like you and me talk as if careers are a standard thing in people's lives, and I think they're probably pretty unusual. The guy who I've forgotten his name, who took over the Harvard study of
Oh, Robert Waldinger.
yeah, so he has different stages of development than Erickson did, but one of his stages of development is career consolidation. And I was very struck by that. Of course, he was dealing with Harvard graduates. So
Right.
the Harvard graduates that he were dealing with were pretty much all people who went on to have careers of one sort or another. Had he been talking to the average high school graduate from an ordinary public school, there would be lots of people who didn't have careers at all, although they did have work. I just think that when we talk about retirement, we should be thinking about people who work only for money, as well as those of us who do it because it really is part of who we are.
So I don't know. I think about it. Hold on, I'm just going to introduce you because people are asking. This is Michael Friedman, who is he is retired. He founded the Geriatric Mental Health Alliance, and he's been an advocate for aging for 50 years. So welcome, Michael. And I'm Deborah Heiser. I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I specialize in aging, mentorship, and my area of research that I focused on was depression. But we're talking about, yeah, Slay, that's right. He's pretty cool. So I see retirement a little bit differently. I see it as something where something differently than you're saying. I see it as, we all work. Like I've had jobs, not careers. I didn't start out with a career. I worked a lot of different jobs, and I still identified with those jobs. I identified as a teacher's aide. I identified when I worked in a store as having a job. I felt good about that. I enjoyed that. I liked my coworkers. Not a lot changed when I moved to my career, except that one had a longer path that had more growth to it. But I said, I really think that if I were to go back, I really felt proud about the jobs that I had also. There wasn't a difference really. And I'm a first gen college student, so I didn't know to expect necessarily a career. I expected to always work in a job. And so it was a little bit surprising, but I'd say still that in terms of retirement, the feeling of identity with being employed is a good feeling. You have a place to go. People rely on you. You have colleagues, whether you're in a career or a job. But money is the real motivator for that. You're paying your bills, you're doing what you need to do. And sometimes when you have a career, you can pivot that to do something similar where you're doing it for no pay. And that I think can definitely end up happening, but still the motivation would be different. You don't have to do it for money anymore.
Well, I think you're right. In your recent blog, you pointed to three things that are important in preparing for retirement. I have a few to add to the list, but I think you're fundamentally right. And the first important thing is money. Most of us who work have to work in order to make a living.
Yeah.
There are a few people in the world who are blessed to have trusts or whatever, so that they don't have to work to make a living. But
right.
So making sure that you are prepared to handle the financial things that you'll have to handle once you're retired is, I think you're right, absolutely critical to preparing for retirement. And I'm afraid a lot of people don't do that. I haven't seen the most recent data, but if there's anybody out there who thinks they can live on Social Security, think again. And you need to find out what retirement benefits you have at work. And I'll tell you what I did, and I've ended up in a really good situation for a social worker. I'm a social worker, and I've got plenty of money now that I'm 82. And the way in which that happened was that I took advantage of every opportunity to put money away tax-free.
Yeah.
And everybody has those opportunities. I think that still exists. I'm quite sure. And I would say to all the younger people who are listening to this, put away as much money as you possibly can as you go along. You may not have all the wonderful things you want to have, but you'll probably be able to live just fine. And it'll make a huge difference when you get to be my age. I'm 82, and I have enough money so that I'll be able to live at what for me is a comfortable level until I die. My financial advisor assures me that it's so encourage me to spend more money. But, but that's all because of the preparation. And so you're absolutely right to point to that that was number one on your list. And I think it's just incredibly important.
I think everybody keeps finances, at the front of their mind. That's what most people think retirement is all about. And it's so much more, because most people that I know, and I think career, I just want to back that up a little bit. I think oftentimes career is a hard one because you have your identity tied up with it. So if you're a lawyer, you might identify with being a lawyer. And when you leave that, you say, what's my identity? It's hard when you have a title. But most people, if they're identifying with any kind of hobby that they have, or passion project, or interest that they have, is going to have an easier time with shifting that identity. And that's where I feel like, if you decide, hey, I'm not going to live on Social Security, I didn't put enough away, I didn't plan for it, you can still work and feel good about that. It doesn't have that same feeling. There's you have a pie, that you can do. And you have a section of that pie where you devote it towards making some extra money. And it doesn't feel the same as, when you're working full time. You work part time. You do it just for, making the ends meet. And you do it in something that you really enjoy. And one example that I had was somebody who was an artist who worked and didn't get an opportunity to, get involved in some of the activities that he enjoyed until retirement came along. And then he said, I'm going to go to all of the sports games, but I'm going to do it as the bus driver. So he became a college sports bus driver. And then he got to go down on all the fields and watch all the sports from the field level. And I thought that was a really clever way of shifting and pivoting. And most of us don't think that we can do that we can make a pivot that's big to something that we enjoy. Or you think there's no job in that I could do. Those are the kinds of creative things that I think that we've left off the table as options.
I think that's a good observation. There are many options for people. So working for pay in one way or another is certainly one of them. Working as a volunteer is another.
Yeah.
And when you work as a volunteer, you're not necessarily doing something particularly different from what you've done when you were working for pay.
True. Yeah.
You may be, but you may also continue the kind of work that you've done, but just do it as a volunteer. So I was paid for however many years to be a primarily mental health advocate. And when I retired, I just kept doing what I had been doing. I just didn't take any money for it anymore.
Yeah.
And I was lucky in that I didn't need to. There are other things that I think people need to be thinking about when they retire. You're right to point to the extent to which people's identity is tied up with their work, and I'd like to come back to that. But another thing that people get out of work that is very important is social life.
Tell me about that.
Well, you hang out with people when you go to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You kibitz with people. Can I use the word kibitz? People,
yeah, why not? You define it for people that don't know what kibitzing is.
You kid around with people. You talk to people. You talk about the weather. You talk about the baseball game. You talk about your kids. You just talk about this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And you hang out together. And while you're at work, you have these social contacts, which are very important in people's lives. And one of the things that happens when people retire and leave the workplace is all of a sudden that's gone.
Yeah.
Because they weren't long lasting relationships. They were relationships of the moment. And those relationships of the moment are great fun.
Yeah.
Some of them turn into real friendships, but there, there's so much that happens on the job that is simply social pleasure, uh, that it's important to think about. Well, I'm going to retire. I'm finally going to get out of that office, which I'm going to stop doing this job, which I'll be happy not to do anymore. Uh, but you're going to be leaving a lot of people behind. And where you're going to find people is something else that you really need to think about. So, yes, it's very important to plan to have enough money. It's also important to give some thought to, well, who am I going to hang out with?
Right.
Am I going to sit home alone all day? No. And you know, and there are an awful lot of people who end up hanging out at bars because they've got no other place to go. They've got no other connections with people.
Nobody, you're right about that. And nobody really tells anybody when you retire that what the options are. What can I do? Where can I go? Who can I meet? There's so many places that are available, but who knows about them? They're not, it's not like your workplace tells you. So where do you find it? You have to be plugged in your community before you leave, because otherwise you still don't know what's available.
Yeah. I think in most communities there are departments of aging which are sources of information about where you can connect. I think there are a number of places to turn fairly naturally for those people who are involved with a religion. Obviously, their house of worship can be an important place to connect with people. For people who are interested in politics, political life goes on at all ages, and there's plenty for older people to do as part of the political process. There are all sorts of volunteer roles that you can take on, which are not only a way of dealing with the issue of identity that you were talking about before, but they are ways of connecting with people. And I would emphasize that having connections with people is absolutely essential to being able to enjoy life when you're retired.
I agree 100% with you. People who even make mid-career pivots, some people will have, time off from a job that they didn't plan on. So those can feel somewhat like retirement in many ways, but it's the connections that if you make the connections, the rest will fall in place. And I put some ideas in the chat here, like house of worship, community ed, library. Somebody put in, Eric put in fish every day, fishing. You mentioned the Department of Aging and communities. Those are all places that you can go to get plugged in. Besides that, though, if you are able to pursue a hobby that you enjoy that's outside of it, like a lot of people love animals, so you can get connected with, the animal shelters in your area. You can get connected with, groups that love to fish or golf or do whatever it is that you enjoy. Those are areas where you're also going to meet your connections. So it's trying all of those. It's getting any exposure to any of them, saying this is not for me, this is for me. You have to try them all to see which ones work for you.
Well, I think that your mention of hobbies is very important. So as you know, I had the good fortune to have two hobbies over
Yeah.
the course of my lifetime, playing jazz and photography. And now I have developed a new identity. I'm a jazz photographer, and I've become the house photographer for the major jazz club here in Baltimore. Uh, fortunately, I had jazz before I retired.
Yeah.
And,
And photography. You had photography as well.
and photography as well. That's
Into
right.
photography decades ago and so good at it.
And and so I was able to bring those together. I had I got together recently with a friend of mine who is a man of enormous achievement, enormous. I mean, it's national, international uh, player in the world of science. Uh, but he never had any hobbies. And at this
Yeah.
point, he's just turned 82 like me. And at this point, he's saying, well, I'm doing less of what I used to do. He has continued to be an important player in the field of science, even after he retired. Um, but he's now thinking, well, what else? And he doesn't have hobbies. So it's hard for him to find something
Yeah.
to do. So again, I would encourage people to pay attention to what you said about the importance of having hobbies that can turn into a new life
It's
and
funny.
a new identity.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a shift. It's funny because I met with a woman years ago, and I was called in because she was having trouble downsizing and with retirement. And she was a teacher, and she was really worried about her new role. What was her identity? She had been a teacher for so many decades. And I was in her home and I looked around and I said, wow, look at all this beautiful artwork here. And she said, oh, I made all of that. And I said, wow, you never told me you were a painter or an artist. And she said, I'm not. I just did those. And I said, so your entire house is filled with gorgeous artwork that I came in and noticed how beautiful it is. And, she said, oh, but I never identified as that. I never thought of myself as that. I only thought of myself as a teacher. So it turned out that she was able to pivot, and then she was moving and went down to another state and was able to open up um, a place where she could sell her art. And she then had a new identity as an artist. So a lot of us need a new identity, but it's one that we already have. And Soul 8 Lens is saying every period in your life requires a new identity. And it's true. It's like we need to say every few years, what am I identifying with? Am I missing anything? And sometimes it's bringing something that was maybe lower on the totem pole of our identity and bringing it up higher so that we can embrace that. So it's never giving something up necessarily, but it's shifting and changing with our identities.
Well, I think you're mentioning a person who had art in her life is a very important thing to mention. Lots of people in retirement move away from the work that they did and finally devote time to doing the artistic things that they wish they had done when
Yes.
they were younger. That's particularly true, I think, of painting. I have any number of friends who have retired and now are painting. Usually they go to class. Now, if they go to class, they're meeting people, they're getting engaged with other people who have a similar interest and are sharing their world with them. So that's a real advantage. They also have something to really do and to work at, which is an advantage. And of course, if you're doing art and if it happens, it can be a transcendent experience.
Yeah.
It can take you beyond this world to something else. Now, that doesn't happen for everybody. Many people who decide that they're going to do art when they get older work at it, plug away at it. They may get better at it, but never get to the point of doing a transcendent piece of work. But,
Yeah.
but lots of people do have moments of transcendence when they're doing that. I think turning to creative work is very important. I think of Candide. And that's a novel from many years ago. I've just blocked on the name of the writer. Maybe you can remember. But it's about a period in history in which terrible things are going on in the world. And at the end of the experiences that the main characters have in this novel, terrible, terrible experiences, and they have a sense of the world is just beyond hope. And they say, well, we're just going to cultivate our gardens. And there are many of us who have worked in one way or another to make the world a better place. And you get to a certain age, and while some people continue forever working to make the world a better place, others of us make the choice, no, now it's time to step back and to cultivate our gardens,
Yeah.
to look at these other potentials that we left behind. Now, you write all the time about midlife.
Yeah.
You know, my theory of a midlife crisis, I don't know if it's the same as yours, but my theory of the midlife crisis is one day you wake up and you say, oh my God, I could have been. Because as we grow up, we make choices and opt in favor of one of our potentials, and that means leaving others of our potentials behind. And then we get to a certain point in life and we look back and we say, oh, I could have been an artist. I could have been something, whatever it is. Uh, and I think in old age, and I'm now talking from my 80s, there's this opportunity to look back and to say, here's something I left undone. Here's something I would have liked to do. I can do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens all the time. It's interesting. You said art, but music is another thing. And I thought people who did music would be the only people who would try music in retirement. But I play pickleball. Someone mentioned pickleball in the chat, and I play pickleball. And one of the people I play with is just recently retired. And I asked him what he's up to, and he said, "Oh, I'm playing the piano. I'm taking piano lessons." And I said, "Oh, did you used to play when you were younger?" And he said, "No, I just wanted to play. Felt like this is my time to learn." And so he's been doing it for a short time now. And he said that, he got like a secondhand piano from somebody, but he plays and he's learning. And he said it's easier than he thought it would be to learn how to read music. And, so he can play it. And I thought, wow, that's really cool, because I think a lot of people think you're done if you haven't tried it before. You can't pick up an art, you can't pick up music, you can't pick up something creative if you didn't ever do it, if you weren't exposed to it when you were younger. And he was living proof that you can.
Yeah, some people do. I think it's particularly hard to do with music. I say that as a musician. If I had to start over again, I think about did your kids play piano or play an instrument when they were little?
Briefly, they played. No, I should just say no. I mean, they were exposed to it, but they didn't play it. They were good at it, but they didn't.
Anybody who's listening to this who has kids who have learned to play an instrument know what they go through to learn to play it. It is so difficult in the beginning, and they play so badly, and it's so awful to listen to. And when you're a kid, you don't realize quite how terrible you are. But when you're a grown-up person and you've been listening to music and you can hear what you're doing compared to what the people you listen to are doing, you say, oh my God, this is really impossible. But of course, you're quite right. There are people who, despite that, learn to play the piano or learn to play other instruments.
Yeah. All forms of art people take up, it's and whether they did it when they were young or not. And I think that one of the cool things that they started was when they had the paint and sip um,
Uh-huh.
pop-up art places where people could go in with absolutely no exposure to art, and in 2 hours, be with a group of people and paint or do things like that. So there are all of these creative things that are popping up that people are embracing now because, there isn't the idea that you have to be good at it. You can just try it and see how it goes.
Um, yes, yes, and that actually is, I think, an interesting issue. How good do you have to be at something?
Yeah.
And I think that varies from individual to individual. So I happen to be the sort of person who wants to keep getting better at things. So I work at it in the hopes of getting better.
Yeah.
But there are other people who are just perfectly satisfied to be able to do what they do.
Yeah.
And they don't feel any desire to develop greater expertise, to polish their skills. And both are perfectly good ways to live in retirement.
Yeah, I agree. There are just so many opportunities. And someone just mentioned in here that music and math are both things that come with your brain growing in ways they don't without them. It doesn't exclude you from it older, but learning when your brain is still more plastic has benefits for sure. Like if you got exposed to things when you're young, it's going to be much easier to do it when you're older. And you might even get more enjoyment from it in that way. But I think also if you aren't looking to have an outcome, um, you might end up really enjoying it, even if you don't get to become a Picasso or you don't become, a world-class musician.
So let me go back a step in talking about retirement. I had mentioned that when you leave your job, you leave a social life behind. We've been talking about
Mhm.
leaving an identity behind and how you shape a different identity. I would just add on the identity issue. Many people have the identity of I used to be.
Oh, you're right.
I used to be a social
When I
worker.
you're right.
But and continue to identify as whatever that is. I was a banker, I was a social worker, I was a psychologist, and they have, many of them, a great deal of pride in what they did in the past. And it's not so much that they haven't lost their identity when they leave their work. They continue to have the identity of the person that they were.
Yeah.
There are other people who want to develop a new identity.
Yeah.
And it's important for them to do that. And it's important to understand I'm 82 years old. I'm going to be 83 years old. I have a new life. I'm
Yeah.
a social worker who's become, if I do say so myself, a very good jazz photographer. It's a whole new life. Uh, and people can do that. So one way or the other, looking back with pride, looking forward to something new for yourself. But I just, and I started to say, let's go back a step. One of the things that you leave behind when you leave work is structure.
Yes. And that's an important thing.
So most of us are not real good at structuring ourselves. And an awful lot of people who retire without something to do report that they just have their days slip away. They don't know what happened. I got up, I had a cup of coffee, I read the newspaper. Well, then it was time for lunch. And after lunch, I was feeling a little tired, so I took a nap. And I woke up, and then it was time for a drink. And then it was time for
Yeah.
dinner. And then it was time to watch television. And, and their days slip away from them.
Yeah.
When they worked, they had to be at work at a certain time. That's less true today than it was in my time because more people work from home now. But they had to be at work at a certain time. They had certain tasks that they were supposed to do, and they had structure to their days which came to them externally.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with your days is a question that you should be thinking about before you retire. Now, there are some people who are perfectly happy to get up in the morning, have a slow cup of coffee, read the paper until lunchtime, etc., etc. But there are other people who have days like that, and they just feel it got away from me.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
drifting.
waste. I'm drifting. Uh, I'm not taking advantage of this new time that I have. So again, I think thinking about the structure of the day is something very important.
I agree with you. You know, that is not just for retirement. I noticed that during COVID, which was, several years ago, people really in the beginning enjoyed being at home. And then people were starting to say, I need structure. I need to, like, I also asked I teach and I asked to go back to school and not teach remotely because I needed to get out and have that structure. And a lot of other people felt that also there could be drift, even if you had things that you were doing during the day. So that feeling of there's just too much time where I don't have a structure that's set out in front of me. But that in particular in retirement is a huge one because you can end up drifting before you know it. It's like it happens fast where you don't have a structure set in place and then all of a sudden the drift sets in and it's hard to get out of that drift because there's a level of comfort to it. So I've seen that with individuals and getting people to see how just a time, even 2 days of structure might be helpful or two instances is helpful. Getting out on a Tuesday and a Thursday at first thing in the morning can help a person's day be much more fruitful.
Yes, I mean, for some people experience the lack of structure as freedom.
Yeah.
And now I'm not stuck driving in rush hour traffic to get to a job that I really am not so thrilled that I have anyway, and doing what the boss tells me to do.
Yeah.
Now I can do what I want to do. And so for some people, it's great not to have the structure of work, but it's great for people who are able to use that time in a way that works for them.
Yeah.
And it's different for different people.
I agree.
Mhm.
I agree. There is no one-stop shop for retirement. Everybody's got different things. Everybody has, the idea that they're going to move forward with and their idea of what a great retirement looks like. And, that's different for everybody, but it's hard sometimes to match what your idea of what retirement will feel like when you're really there. Sometimes that's a surprise for people. For the most part, people retire or they go through transitions and it's fine. But for some, it can be a struggle because what they expected doesn't feel as good. They want the structure, they want something there, they want more connection. And that's easy enough to get. It's just that you have to be mindful of it and intentional.
Uh, yeah, some people really take to it. And they enjoy having time where they don't have anything that they have to do.
Right.
It doesn't trouble them at all that they don't have a sense of importance or purpose about what they're doing, but just that they're living to satisfy themselves and they're happy reading books or watching television, going out with their friends for lunch and for drinks and so forth. And it works for them. But there are other people who it doesn't work for. So
Right.
I said at the beginning of the show, I've failed at several retirements. My wife, where she's still alive, would absolutely agree with that because she was able to retire and enjoy life. When I retired, I felt still the same need to make a contribution to the world, to do things that are productive and to work at self-improvement and so forth. Now, that's my nature. I'm not saying it's not right. it is my nature. And my wife's nature was different, and she had a lovely retirement, and I had a totally different kind of retirement. She would say that I never really retired, but
I don't think you did ever really retire, but that's what is okay about retirement.
yeah.
It's really just a word that we put a lot of weight on.
So one other thing I want to mention while we still have time, and that is that not only is work a source of identity, it's a very important source of self-esteem.
Oh, absolutely. You're right
So,
about that.
so even if, I said at the beginning, there are some people who just have jobs, but their jobs are often a source of self-esteem, if only because they're supporting themselves and they're supporting their families.
Yeah.
Uh, and they take pride in the fact that they are working, that they're earning a living, that they're supporting a family, that they're being good mothers and fathers, uh, that they're leading good lives. Um, and of course, then there are other sources of self-esteem. For some people, self-esteem means more having a feeling of being an important person in the world. And I'm sure you know plenty of people for whom it's really important that they feel like they are important people in the world.
Yeah.
And there are other people who don't care.
Right. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
We have a comment for you. Somebody said, LOL, that's funny. Failed at multiple retirements. Totally understandable too. More freedom over your output, I'm thinking, hoping, if you've come from the traditional job setup. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So you
I'm
have,
not, yeah. I've been very lucky. Uh, I'm not sure how to respond to that exactly. Uh, but I've been very lucky. I've had a career that was a career of my own choosing and my own making, more or less. And I've um, been able to do things which are satisfying for me, which I feel make something of a contribution to the world. I've never felt that I've made enough of a contribution. That's another comment on my character. Uh, but I feel like I've made some contribution, and that I can continue to do that. So I feel very lucky. As we got into this whole thing, because I write a blog from the standpoint of being over 80, in which I emphasize that life gets pretty tough as you get older.
yeah.
There's all sorts of physical and mental issues and personal losses that you experience, and the older you get, the more it happens. So when you get to be my age, there's lots to cope with. But that said, man, I've got a good life.
That's great to hear. And I've always seen you having a good life. You've always enjoyed your life, which is nice. Um, I don't see much of a change, you being retired, um, from when, a few decades ago when you were working and working, doing a lot. So, you know what it is? You've always been super busy. You're
Super busy.
You always and you're super social. So you've always been doing things with others and involved in things that matter to you, like the arts and your photography and writing. None of that has changed. So you're still contributing. And I think that's great. It feels to me, I don't know, I'm speaking by what I see, but it feels to me like your transition was one where you just sort of stepped over a line, I'm working, now I'm not, and then just continued on and
Yeah,
did a
it
little
was
bit
a
what you
significant change when I stopped working for pay. And that was not easy for me. because even though I had accumulated enough through the savings that I had done earlier in life to be able to live without working for pay, and I had earned it.
Yeah.
I earned it, and I knew I earned it, but I still felt really strange about not working for pay and just taking money that came from it's I don't it just
What was it? Did you miss the paycheck, the physical paycheck going into the bank, or what was it?
no I felt that I missed the feeling that I'm earning my way. I'm it's very hard to explain, but I began to feel like even though this was all my own money, all money that I had accumulated on my own, well, not my own, with my wife, and we had planned, and things worked out for us. I still felt like, no, I should be working, and I should be working.
Yeah.
It took a while to get past that.
Yeah.
I don't feel that now. I will tell you, I was very happy immediately not to have to raise money anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough thing to do.
So there are some people who like raising money, but I was pretty successful at it, but I never liked it.
Yeah, I know. I don't like doing that, but it is a part of many jobs. So it's, retirement coming from, the two different perspectives of looking at it. Like I've worked with individuals who've been going through retirement transitions. You've retired, and I expect to retire. And it's funny because money has been the least thing I've focused on. I don't really put, it's not that I'm not preparing, but I don't put as much weight on that. And I really thought that I would by my age, because I'm late 50s, that I would have put more there. I think that I feel like the one thing that is a nice thing is I feel like there are always options. And I am prepared for financially retirement, but I do feel like I have options. I can keep working. Like my husband, who's older than me, has said, I'm never going to retire. And he may never retire. He doesn't want to. He enjoys working. He really has a good time with it. So I feel like I always have that ability to work if I want. I've worked before. I can work again. Yeah, it's Michael Friedman. And so I think that that's something that if midlifers can look at, yeah, the Michael Friedman, um, that people can take a look at their retirement in a positive way. There's someone who's a fan of yours.
Oh, who is that?
I don't know. Can you say your name so that I can tell him you're here? So
Is that
here's another
man thing?
going to agree into the group you work with, then it'll be peer support. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to age into the group that you work with, then it'll be peer support. Yeah. I think that midlifers do see more options ahead. And that's a refreshing thing because that wasn't allowed before. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't an option, really. It was just get your finances in order, which is a lot of stress. And now I think people, to your point in the comment, there is more peer support. More people are okay with that, feeling good about it, thinking it's an okay decision. The person didn't say who they are, Michael, so I don't know.
Okay.
So anyway, yes, it is the Michael Friedman.
Whoever it is, hello there.
So, retirement is one of those things, both you and I have written about it. We come from completely different perspectives. But I will say I read your article and you read mine, and I think we had more in there that was alike than different.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the article that I sent you was about jazz and retirement, but essentially it was about what you have to accomplish to live well in retirement. And in that article, I didn't talk about money at all, I don't think, although maybe I did. It's a prerequisite. Uh, having the money, having a decent place to live.
Yeah.
That's got to be there for everything. But what I did there was to try to draw from the cognitive psychologists sense. I'm blocking on the name of the man whose work I quoted from,
Mm,
the father of positive psychology. What is his name?
let me look it up.
See, this is one of the things that happens when you get to be 82.
Oh, it
Although
happens when you're
he's
50
younger.
too. I totally get it.
In any case, he suggests that there are 5 elements of living well, and he's talking at any age, not particularly about old age. One of them is having positive emotion. So that's feeling good emotionally. It's
Yeah.
the opposite of being depressed, which we discussed to some extent last week. Another is having relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
third is having activities that are important to you. And he makes the observation there that I think is really important, and that is that you need to have activities in your life which you so deeply connect with that you lose track of time. You get immersed and you'll suddenly look up and say, oh my God, I've been doing this for 2 hours. And it'll come almost as a surprise because you get lost in the activity.
Yeah.
And he also stresses the need for achievement, and
Yeah.
I think he's not quite right about that.
Why not? I think that achievement is important. And you had talked about having hope for the future all the way to the end of life. So why would you say
So
not achievement?
my question about his point of view on this is that, and again, leaving myself aside, I happen to be somebody who wants achievement. That's who I am. But I think there's a difference between achievement and personal best. So if you're measuring achievement by the standards of the outside world, your friend's the painter, your friend the painter. I have no idea how good her paintings were, but I have friends who have become painters in their old age. And trust me, their paintings don't measure up.
So
They're having a good time.
you're thinking about then, so that like if you look at Dave McClellan's achievement, motivation or his motivations, he looked at different motivations, and one was achievement, right? Where you are looking to just do better than you did before.
Well,
That's
it depends again. Then it depends
maybe
on.
they had high achievement motivation and we're just doing better than they did before.
Well, I think those are different.
Yeah.
I think having high achievement is not the same thing as doing better than you did before. So for our friends, the painters, who are working hard and whose ability is getting better over time, I think that's important and it probably gives them a great deal of satisfaction. But I think the way, geez, I can't bring back his name, talks about it is more in terms of a high level of achievement in the world. And I don't think you need to have a high level of achievement in the world to have satisfaction of getting better at things.
No, I don't think so either. I don't know the work that you're talking about, so I'm not able to reference it, but I do know that people at any age are going to follow their same motivations. So if you are high in certain motivations like affiliation, if you're high in achievement, if you're high in power, any of those, you're going to continue to do that. So you might go lead a volunteer organization if you're high in power motivation. You might be somebody who, if you're high in achievement motivation and always have been, you're going to try to do something better than you did before, whether that's art or gardening or writing or whatever you do. And if you're high in affiliation, you're going to be out there making friends and doing things with others, and that's going to be your motivation. And you can have a bit of all three of them or be more motivated in one area, but I think that never wanes as we get older, that we always continue to have those motivations.
I think you're right. The fifth thing that, God, I wish I could bring back the name. That's terrible. In any event, the fifth thing he talks about is having a sense of meaning.
Yes.
And what he means by that is that your life somehow connects with something bigger than you.
That's so important. And that's, it's funny because, that kicks in midlife, but I think that it could kick in earlier for us if we, were able to sort of get the idea of how we are a part of the bigger world. But in midlife, that kicks in and it never goes away. That does not wane with age. The need to have meaning, the need to matter, the need to, say everything I did had some meaning to it, or that what I will do will have meaning also.
I think it's a complicated concept that is often treated too simplistically. People often identify, particularly in the psychological literature, they identify meaning and purpose. I don't think they're the same thing. I think purpose is one type of meaning. But I think that for people who have a spiritual nature, the sense of meaning is a sense of transcendence, a sense of connection with a larger universe. Maybe it's a connection with a divine being, whether it's God or Allah or whatever your religion gives you. But these are ways of finding meaning in life. These spiritual opportunities that there are in life are very important. And that's not the same thing as saying religion.
I agree with you.
Not at all. So, I find transcendence in jazz.
Meaning is something that is more abstract than, when most people say that they want to be, that they want to have purpose. Purpose is, and there's an action with that. And you don't have to have an action with meaning. It can be you feeling something or experiencing something without having an action attached to it. It's finding the meaning without having to go anywhere. And purpose often feels like you have to do something that there's an action attached to it. I think you're right. It's presented simplistically and as though the two are the same.
And purpose is about accomplishment. What is
Yeah. There's like an action, something you're doing.
It's very Western. So if we were Buddhists, our aspiration might be for nirvana. And nirvana is not a purpose that would be achieved. It is a state of being. It's a way of being in the universe in which, in fact, you lose all ambition and that Eastern perspective is just very different from the kind of striving that is particularly Western. Not that I object to striving. I'm simply saying that it's not the way in which all people find meaning in their lives. There are people who find meaning in a kind of spiritual connection.
Oh, for sure. And going inward and reflecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't usually make that distinction either. And I now I'm going to do that. I think that you make a good point there. I'm going to start to talk about that in a less simplistic way.
Yeah, a sense of meaning. Well, meaning has many meanings. So I keep intending to write an article one day about the many meanings of meaning.
That's a good article. I can't wait to read that.
All right.
The many meanings of meaning.
Many meanings of meaning. But a big part of a sense of meaning is being in a world, a universe, a big cosmic thing where you have a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And again, that's not purpose.
You're right.
That's something different. And it's hugely important to people.
Absolutely. I think it's important to all of us. It's just it's not talked about enough to make it easy to articulate and bring that up into a conversation because it's fairly abstract and people don't talk about it very often.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So you need to write that article, The Many Meanings of Meaning.
Many meanings of meaning. Okay. Well,
I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to tell people a little bit about you for those who came on a little bit later and where they can find both of us. So Michael Friedman is retired. He is in his 80s. He writes for Substack, and he takes the perspective of a very old man. And he is the founder of the Geriatric Mental Health Alliance, and he was an advocate for 50 years or more than 50 years. And so he was a social worker, geriatric social worker. And I'm Deborah Heiser. I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I met Michael decades ago because I was in the field of aging doing research, and I was president of the State Society on Aging, and we crossed paths. And here we are, reconnected after not being in touch for almost 10 years after you retired. So it's great to be back in conversation with you because you've always been making an impact in the work that you do. You've always been writing. You've always been making change and making people think more about aging. And so I'm very glad that we're back in touch and doing these lives because it's making me think more, and I hope others as well. So people can find Michael's work on Substack. Tell the name, please.
it's One Very Old Man.
One Very Old Man. And mine is The Right Side of 40. I write about midlife and he writes about old age. So check out both of our work on Substack if you're interested. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Deborah.
I'll see you again next week.
Very good.
Bye.
Always good to talk with you.
You too.